Hello guys, Tom here, and today I'm testing 35 Nintendo Switch games on the AYN Thor. So I'm going to be putting it through its paces, testing some amazing Switch games. So I'm going to be showing you the gameplay, the performance I get from those games, and sharing some of the settings and drivers I used as well to get that performance. So I'm going to be using the Eden emulator to play my Switch games, and I'm using my AYN Thor Max model, which has got 16 gig of RAM and 1 terabyte of internal storage. And I've picked a variety of games, from heavy hitters that are going to really push the Thor to its limits to some sort of lesser demanding stuff, just so you can see what's possible to play. And I'm going to be going through the games, playing them, letting you see the performance, and just sort of commenting as I go how I feel the gameplay is and whether it's smooth. So the Thor uses the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset, which has really good support at the moment within the community, and we're getting regular drivers being released. Even this week we've had a new one drop. So that helps with performance in the games, and it means that as new drivers are introduced into the community, they can be used to test older games, and some which previously didn't run now do. So we're sort of at an amazing point where Switch emulation is just fantastic on this chipset with these devices. So the results of the gameplay I'm going to show you will also apply to the Odin 2 Portal, the Odin 2 Pro, and the Odin 2 Mini. So all those chipsets will be applicable to this video as well, in addition to the Metroid Pocket 6, which is upcoming sort of January next year. That's going to be using a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset as well. So it's such a good time at the moment to have a device that's got a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip inside it, because the performance and support within the community is amazing. And it's also worth sharing at this point a couple of community resources where you can go check other people's results from changing settings or using different drivers, and also share your own results from your emulation. So the first is EmuReady. So this is a website or an app where people will go on and share their settings, their compatibility reports, what kind of gameplay they were getting, the drivers they were using. So this is a really good resource. You can filter it by device, so in our case the AYN Thor, and see what settings people used to get their games running. And another is Ryan Retro's website, where he shares a load of compatibility reports as well as community inputted ones, and again a similar thing for settings used, drivers used, and there is a box to tick to get Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 results, so that would apply to the Thor. Next up, I'm going to give you a really quick and simple guide on how to get Eden installed on your device and set up and ready to play your Switch games. So you're going to want to visit the link in the description for the GitHub Eden page, and then we'll go down to releases, press on here, and the most recent one was last week, so we're on version 0.04 RC2. So we're going to go down and find the standard version of the APK. So that's this one here, Eden Android Standard. So we're going to go ahead and download that. And once it's downloaded, we're going to want to open and install the APK. So once that's done, we'll press open and we go to the welcome screen. So we'll press get started. We're going to grant permission for notifications, and then we're going to want to select our prod keys. So I'm not going to be able to link in where these are located. You're going to have to find these yourselves, and a simple Google search will normally help you with that. So we're going to press select keys, and my prod keys are stored on my device itself within my ROMs folder. So I'll go into there in my prod keys, and there's different versions. So I'd recommend going for 19.0.1 if you are searching for and using prod keys. So we'll go here and select our prod keys. Next, it's going to prompt us to select our firmware. So again, I can't link in with that, but search and you will find. So we'll select firmware, and again, I've got a folder set up with my firmware, and that needs to match your prod keys. So again, I've got 19.0.1. The latest version of Eden does support versions up to 20.0, etc. But I think for stability and better performance, potentially stick for now with 19.0.1, because that's proven, it's been in use for a while with Eden and it works. And that's what I've used for all the testing today. So we'll install the firmware, and then we'll be prompted to select our games folder. So we'll press add games, and again within the storage on my device I've got a ROMs folder, and I've got them all stored in here within Switch. So this can be anywhere on the device. So we'll press use this folder, and then we're going to allow it to do a deep scan as well, just in case you've got games within folders inside there. And it's as simple as that. So that's the initial setup, and all your games should be here visible on the carousel. So it looks really pretty. You can change sort of how that shows as well. So we've got a grid form, we've got a list, but I really like the carousel. That looks very, very pretty. And what we're going to want to do now is tinker with the settings. So the main thing is to start looking at your drivers. So we'll press the settings cog and we'll go to GPU driver manager. So as standard, we've just got the system GPU driver, the Qualcomm, but we can fetch drivers through the option on the bottom left there. So this is a really good feature within Eden, where it can give you a recommended driver for your handheld. So in this case, Mr. Purple T22, which if you do the drop down menu here, it shows it there, and we can tap, it shows you the details, and we can press show downloads, and we can download it there. So that's a really simple way of getting drivers onto your device. And we'll see here, Turnip Adreno driver T22 hotfix. And this is a good catch-all sort of driver for quite a few games, but there are actually more recent drivers. So I'll show you on the screen here. If you do a quick Google search for Turnip drivers, it will bring up the GitHub page, but I'll link it in the description as well. And you can download the very, very latest Turnip drivers. So as of sort of recording this video, the most recent one is Turnip V2600R3. So I've been using this for quite a bit of my testing. So I've downloaded this onto my device, linked it in here, and we've got the Mesa Turnip driver V26R3 there ready to use and selected. So if you select it within the settings there, it applies it to all the games, but you can press and hold one of the games to go into per game settings, which is quite cool because some of the games work better with different drivers, and all you do then is press settings to change it per game, and that will save and apply just for that game. And next, just to set up the controls, so we'll launch one of the games and it will bring up sort of this overlay, which we don't really want. So we'll swipe from the left there and we'll go down to overlay options and we'll untick show controller, and that will remove the controller overlay. And then what we can do just to make sure the controls are mapped correctly is we'll press controls, player 1, and we can see here controllers connected, and you can auto map a controller. So we'll just tap Odin controller 0, and that should then automatically map all the buttons to the controller, and we're ready to go. So if we press the buttons there, it's all working perfectly. In addition to the settings there that I've shown you, there are some advanced graphical settings that we can go into and tinker with as well if you wanted to do that. So if we press advanced settings, and this brings up a number of settings here. So system, we can change the switch from docked mode to handheld mode. So in dock mode, it increases the resolution at the cost of performance potentially. So for the majority of the games I've tested, in fact nearly all of them, I've just played it in handheld mode just because I want the best performance, and they still look good in handheld mode, but feel free to go in and experiment by switching dock mode on or off. You can also change the graphic settings, so it can change the resolution here, upscaling all the way up to a 4x. For pretty much all the games I've tested today, I've stuck to the 1x resolution because they look good on this screen, and with it being OLED, the colours, the vibrancy, the deep blacks look fantastic. I don't feel the need to be going crazy upscaling so much, but again, you can experiment with that and see if that suits your needs. There are a number of sort of finer tuning graphical settings. I found that I didn't really have to do that with the vast majority of games, if any, but feel free if you want to try and eke out a bit more performance in terms of using asynchronous shaders. You can do that to try and prevent some of the stuttering, but again, that could be at the cost of some glitching and issues. So I'd say just as a standard, make sure you've got your drivers set up here, make sure that you've got your controllers mapped, and then go from there. And if you want to try and change the settings, do them one by one, see if that improves performance, and just go from there. And in terms of the settings on the 4 today that I'm going to be using, I'm running it in 120 FPS mode. I'm going to have it in high performance, and I'm also going to have the fan on smart mode. That way it will change the fan speed based on the temperature it's outputting. And just during the testing, keep an eye on these at the bottom, the dials, because this will give you an indication of sort of the RAM that's being utilised, and that's sort of quite key for the device that you've got. So sort of the base model of the 4 has 8 gig of RAM. So you'll see here we've got 5.48 gig being used just in sort of idle mode with Eden being booted up. So it'll give you an idea really of what your device can handle based on the games that we're playing today, and the CPU and GPU usage as well. And just before we jump into all the gameplay, I'll just give you a bit of a too long didn't read it, it's like early verdict on the performance. And to be honest, I was blown away. Like the number of games that were running, even without the updates and swapping drivers, was phenomenal. Some really smooth gameplay, really enjoyable, and you could easily play from start to finish on most of the games that I tested. There are a couple that presented me issues graphically, with flashing textures or flat out just wouldn't run at all. But for the most part, where we're at with Switch emulation on the 4 is amazing. And of course, none of the Switch games will be utilising the bottom screen, so that frees it up to do other things like loading up a guide, watching a video guide, or booting up a bit of old school RuneScape if you want a dual game whilst you're playing your Switch. And just for future 4 videos, if you've got any other games you'd like me to showcase, any other systems, drop a comment below. But I'm not going to waffle on anymore, let's jump straight into the test and I'll let you see what you think. So first up, I'll try one of the classics, and that's The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So I've loaded in a bit of a save file here, and I'm really impressed. I've been running around for a bit, sort of firing a few arrows and chucking a few bits about, and it's nice and smooth. I'm sort of hitting mostly 30 frames per second pretty solidly. As some of the shaders compile, you get maybe a minor stutter here and there, but it's very, very good, and the colours look really nice. And I'll just sort of say this will apply to pretty much all the games, but the recording here won't do it justice. Like the colours on the screen, the deep blacks, the saturation, vibrancy of this OLED screen, it's incredible really, and it looks really, really good. So yeah, very impressed. It's a great experience and it's playing nicely. So I mean, of course, again, this is a bit of a caveat for all the games. This is a snapshot, I'm playing them for probably 5-10 minutes at a time, but so I can't really comment, from playing the full game how it's going to perform, but from sort of these initial tests and the runarounds, it's very good. So yeah, a nice sort of solid 30 frames per second, very playable in Tears of the Kingdom. Next up, we've got another classic, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So I've loaded in my save file and we're up at the top of the tower, and again, playing really nice. It looks really good. I can't see sort of any texture issues. Panning around is really smooth, and we'll sort of jump off and see what kind of frame drop, if any, we get. Sort of cruising along, so a couple of frames, dropping it down to 27, 26, but just feels really nice. It's 30 frames per second is very playable. And sort of here, when we've got a lot of the map in view, and this is an area I've not sort of visited yet, so you can see it's building in the shaders, but it's still playing really nicely. And there's no sort of obvious input latency as well. It's very smooth, like with the camera panning, sort of the inputs here from the analog sticks. And just as I'm sort of running and jumping around here, sort of notice on the bottom right the RAM utilization. So we're at 5.85 gig of RAM being used there. So bearing in mind the base model is 8 gigabytes, so I've got the max version here which has got 16, so double that of the base. So I really think if you're sort of wanting to emulate some of these higher end Switch titles, certainly like with the Zelda games, it might be worth sort of opting for the higher model just to get some more RAM to chuck at the games and get potentially slightly better performance. So you've got to bear in mind sort of the whole of the RAM usage isn't just going to go towards the game. We're running the system and the emulator and stuff, so every sort of ounce you can chuck at it is going to help. But yeah, very pleased with the performance here. Not had any sort of significant drops or issues in the time I've been running around and playing. So Breath of the Wild gets a big tick from me. And next we got Super Mario Odyssey. So this is one I haven't got a save file for, unfortunately. So we are in the initial stages of the game, but this is one you can pretty much sort of tell straight away whether it's going to run smooth or not. And sort of from my time of emulating and playing this game, I can tell this is quite nice. So we've got smooth sort of frame rate as we're running around, then jumping into the cutscene. We've got sort of a 60 frames per second, 59 hovering around, building in some shaders there, and we're dropping a couple, but it's very nice. So we've got Cappy now and just sort of running around the game and getting a feel for it. And again, it's sort of difficult to comment on performance overall of the whole playthrough of the game. You know, it's not really feasible for me to go through each game from start to finish, but you can get a feel, you know, and I own this game and I've played it through, and sort of with the responsiveness of the controls, the nice sort of smooth panning round and running here, it feels sort of as native as you're gonna get, really. There's no sort of texture issues that I can see. Frame rate's really smooth, so yeah, this is a great experience. I've enjoyed this one, and if performance carried on like this throughout the whole game, I'd definitely be able to play it from start to finish. And we can see sort of the temperature creeping up there, 71 degrees Celsius, and the fan sort of up into 40. So, and I can hear a bit of fan noise starting to creep through as we play it. So we can tell it's sort of a bit more intensive, but it's handling it no problem, nice and smooth. And sticking with the Mario theme, next up we've got Super Mario Wonder. So I've purposefully sort of come into this level fresh just to see how it would perform. So I'm expecting hopefully as close to 60 as possible with this title, just because it's a bit more lightweight and the Thor should be able to eat this one up for breakfast. But straight away I can see there's no sort of texture glitching, any graphical issues. Feels really smooth, sort of with the sort of inputs there with Blue Toad. It's nice. When I press a button, I'm getting what I expect. We can see that the on the top left, if you look at the graphical overlay there, it's building shaders as we go, but I'm not really noticing that as we play. I'm not getting any sort of slowdown or stutters. So again, yeah, purposefully sort of coming into this level fresh. I didn't just want to display sort of stuff that I've been playing over and over again, so you can see how it handles, you know, booting these up for the first time, and how it plays. And to be honest, it's great so far. It's probably worth noting as well the load times. So like for both the Zelda games, Mario Odyssey and this as well, Mario Wonder, really quick. So there's sort of no noticeable extended loading times with emulating these games on the Thor. So in another brand new level, we can see the shaders compiling again at the top, and the colours just look insane. Like again with this OLED screen, it just really doesn't do it justice recording. Saw a bit of a stutter there, again as a sort of building shaders, I guess that catches up on you, but it's not really sort of disrupting the gameplay. It just feels really nice to play. So again, Mario Wonder gets a big green tick from me. This is a joy to play, it's lovely. We'll move away from the Nintendo published titles for a bit, and we'll sample Hollow Knight Silksong. So this has been a really popular release recently. It's a gorgeous game, very fun to play. So this is one I haven't got a save file for, so we're at the beginning, but we're getting a really nice sort of close to 60, pretty much solid 60 performance there. Controls feel nice and responsive, sort of the inputs are exactly what I'd want from it. I'm just bad at the game. In terms of the combat, we'll give that a go. So there's a very minor stutter there. I struck the enemy. Again, I'm only noticing it because I'm sort of critiquing it and I'm looking for it, but it just feels nice. See the sort of frame counter there is staying at 60 pretty much, 59. And the audio's been really good too. I've not noticed any of it cutting out or crackling, and that's been the same on the other games really. Next up, we're at Sunshine Airport for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Some of my favourite games on the Switch, love playing this. So let's see how the performance is. I'll get that little boost at the start. So only going 100cc, I'm not being too brave, but so again I've loaded into this completely fresh just to see how it performs without any shader building prior to starting. But yeah, so we're getting a decent, near enough 60 frames per second experience. Already up into first, so I've not lost it. And just another note too, I've not switched off the frame limiter. I know some testers will just see how fast these games can run, but I'm just looking at real world performance, you know, how you're going to want to actually play these games, and you want it as smooth as possible, sort of as native as possible, you know, and with Mario Kart here, getting 60 is the sweet spot. It looks really nice, it's playing really smooth, and just looking at the screen versus the little monitor on my camera, and again it just doesn't do it justice, you know, with the colours and stuff and how good it looks on screen and the smoothness of controlling the character here, little Koopa. But yeah, very pleased with this. This is a lovely experience. And next up we've got Pokemon Legends ZA, and this has been a bit of a funny one really, because I've done quite a bit of testing to try and fix some of the graphical issues we see. So you see there the textures popping in and out and sort of the blacks and stuff. And the sort of best compromise I can find is the T22 hotfix driver. Even sort of the latest V26 driver doesn't fix that. So yeah, I think this is one perhaps in time we'll get some fixes for, and we'll get this sort of issue sorted with the textures popping in and out. I mean, I'd say the game's playable and it looks nice and crisp and it's running smoothly. We're getting the sort of the solid 30 frames, which is the native frame rate for the game. It's just sort of those textures popping in and out, and occasionally you'll see a character there and not sort of disappear in and out. So it's this isn't perfect emulation really, but of course this is a fairly new game, and to be sort of emulating this on a Android handheld is pretty crazy anyway, but it's not without its flaws. But it does look really good when the textures aren't popping in and out. So we're back with our friend Mario on Super Mario 3D World, and yeah, this is again, I'm going in fresh. See here we're getting a pretty much sort of solid 60 frames with some shaders building in the background there. The game feels like it's running nice and smoothly, sort of responsive controls from Mario. Looks really sharp and crisp too. Sort of see we're getting the ever so slight dips sort of with some of the shader building, but it's not quite as prominent as what we saw with the 3DS emulation with Azahar when it's building some of the shaders. I feel like this is a lot smoother with the sort of background shader building there. Sort of after playing it for a bit, I think the lowest I've seen it drop to is 54 frames, sort of as it's building quite a few shaders at the same time, but there's no sort of graphical issues, no textures missing, significant issues I'd say are game breakers, and it's very playable and it's quite enjoyable. So you could definitely play through this if the performance remains the same throughout. Next up we've got Diablo 3 Eternal Collection, so moving away from Nintendo games, and this has been running at a nice smooth 60 frames per second. Looks really good, responsive, and this is one of my favourite games to play on console, so I'm glad this is running really well. So I must admit it's been a while since I've played Diablo, so I'm just sort of getting back up to speed with the controls, but got my little dude here slaying the undead and yeah, sticking with a nice solid 60 all the way through. And the shader building's been sort of less intense on Diablo, but yeah, the sound's been perfect and it's quite a bit louder as well. I've not adjusted the volume on this game compared to the others, and it's just quite a bit louder, but it sounds really good, so no sort of issues with any crackling or popping out or anything like that. So we can see in terms of, sort of the RAM usage, you get about 4.5 gig of RAM being utilised for this game, so it's not too bad at all. Probably more one of the lighter games we can play. Now next up we've got Grid Autosport, so I love a good driving game, so this is one I tried pretty early on, and it's a bit of a weird one because we get sort of near perfect emulation in some of the racing, but then the menus and the sort of cutscenes and these little intro screens are graphically crazy. So like here we jump into the actual racing and it's great, but some of the menus and the loading stuff is crazy. So but yeah, I can live with that if we get good performance sort of racing. But yeah, we're going to career mode. See there, some real big dips and drops. It's sort of heading into turn 1. But it picks back up and we're good. So I haven't actually played this track, so I've just been playing in sort of free racing, but I've gone into career mode, so this is the first time I've loaded in the Hockenheim circuit and with these cars, and yeah, see some pretty sort of major dips there, and it's showing any sort of building one shader, and you see sort of there with the with the crash, it definitely impacts gameplay when you can't even sort of race smoothly. So we're doing the flashback, and yeah, it's a bit all over the place, dropping there, flashing, not ideal. So yeah, this could be one maybe to fine tune, or perhaps once you've played this circuit with these cars a few times, it's fine. Maybe just sort of after lap one it's okay, but certainly it's not a sort of a pick up and play experience. I'd say like some of the other games we saw with the Mario games, where even loading in the levels for the first time it's fine. This definitely hasn't been. Oh, I thought we were turning there. But yeah, it looks great though. It's a fantastic racer for the Switch. If we can just sort of figure out performance wise, we'd be good to go. And next up we've got Lego Jurassic World. So I've been a bit selfish with some of the testing, because I have just bundled in some of my favourite games, and this is definitely one of them. I'm a massive fan of the Lego series, and this is playing quite nicely. So we're getting pretty much a solid 30 frames per second. It looks really good, and this is another one I tested on GameHub. So I installed the Steam PC version of this game, and I've got to say, with sort of the settings that I was using with that, you know, they were running at 720. This looks probably a bit better than the GameHub version I was running. And frame rate though, probably on GameHub I was getting a bit better, but I think this is running natively, so at 30 frames per second, this is what we're getting. It's quite smooth, it's enjoyable, no texture graphical issues, sounds good. And typically if you can sort of play one Lego game, you're going to be able to play them all, but I'll sort of move on to the next game and show you that isn't quite the case in this scenario, unfortunately. So next up we've got Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, and this is one unfortunately I've just had to throw the towel in for, because I've tried, and I hate to admit it, for so long to try and get this working, because this is one of my favourite games, and it just won't work. Like it runs nicely on GameHub, so that's an alternative, but on Eden and sort of any Switch emulation on Android that I've been trying for a long time, whatever driver I use, whatever settings I use, I just can't get past the opening cutscene. It just has the longest cutscene of all different characters, different sort of environments, and it just makes it crash. So sometimes it won't even get past sort of Rey stood on the rocks going towards the sea, and then sometimes it will go 2 or 3 cutscenes ahead and crash, but it just won't go further than that. So unfortunately this is one, despite all my best efforts, I just couldn't get running no matter what I tried, even importing sort of save files and stuff for the game. So yeah, you can't win them all, and with Lego Star Wars Skywalker we haven't won it. And we move on next to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. So this is again a fantastic game, and it's running perfectly on Eden with the emulation here. The graphics look great, no texture issues, really responsive. Sort of, I'm by no means a pro, as I've proved there. Again, I don't know if you just saw that when we had the fall. It was a bit of sort of a graphical splash when Tony was getting back up. But outside of that, if you just don't fall over, it's looking good. But no, it's playing really nicely, and the main thing is that the controls are responsive, is sort of what you want in a game like this, when you've got to hit the combos and timing's everything. You can definitely do that with this, and it's a smooth 30 frames per second is sort of what the Switch intended, is what you'd get natively. So yeah, I must admit, I've not played this game enough to know if that sort of glitching when the character gets back up after falling over is meant to happen, because I've sort of not seen any other glitching or texture issues for any other part of the game. It's all playing perfectly, so give it the benefit of the doubt. And next we've got Cuphead, which is a fairly lightweight game, but is extremely fun to play, and it's one we've not got a sort of a native Android port for, so it's good to be able to have this in sort of emulated form on the Switch, and it's playing really nicely, getting a solid 60 frames per second, very responsive with the controls, it looks great, and I'm terrible at the game. And in terms of sort of the RAM utilisation for something like this, so we're at 4.84, at 65 degrees Celsius for the temperature, fans run at 34%, so it's It's not overly demanding. It's certainly not the most I've seen pulling out of the 4 for some of the higher end titles. So it's great really that we can sort of get some of the big hitting titles running nicely, but also these sort of lightweight ones which, you know, aren't going to break the bank when it comes to performance. You're going to be able to probably handle this on a sort of base edition of the 4, no issue. But some of your higher end titles, you're going to want to push the boat out really for a Pro or a Max model of the 4. And sticking with lightweight, we're on to Stardew Valley. So this again, we've got an Android port for this, so it isn't so sort of critical to be able to emulate this on Switch, but I thought it'd be nice to show you, and I've got it in my collection, so we'll see sort of how this performs. And to be honest, I think we know the answer. It's going to be great. It's getting a smooth 60 frames. The colours are popping, very vibrant and bright. And I must admit, I'm not sort of familiar if there are any differences between the console versions and the Android version, but it's an option, you know, if you want to have sort of all your games in a collection, you know, a Switch folder, rather than have them spread out across sort of different platforms, then you can have Stardew Valley bundled in there on your Switch collection, because you know it's going to play great with Eden and on the 4. Next up, we've got Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. So this is again another fairly lightweight title, and we're sort of right at the beginning here, but we're getting a nice solid 60 frames per second. It is the first time I booted in, so we're sort of testing as we go for this one, just to sort of see how it performs as a fresh go. And so far, impressed. So textures look really nice. I can't see any graphical issues, and I'm just trying to follow the tutorial here. It's very responsive with the controls. We can see it building shaders in the background again, but no issues, no stutters like we saw with Grid and a couple of the other titles. But yeah, it's playing nicely. And this is one of those games that just looks really beautiful, and then we've got the benefit of the OLED screen again, and the colours just look stunning, you know, with the sort of sunset in the background there, and the darker colours are sort of popping against the saturated reds as I stab these baddies. It looks fantastic. It's playing really nice. So I'm pleased with this. I might even have to give this a play after the video, I think. And next up, you join me in Pallet Town for Let's Go Pikachu. So this is probably one of my favourite recent Pokemon games, sort of having played the original Red, Blue and Yellow from the Game Boy, so I'm particularly drawn to this one, sort of the recreation of that. And it's one I've played quite a bit on the Switch as well. And yeah, it's a great game, so we'll sort of see how this performs. So capturing our first little oddish, hopefully getting a nice sort of solid 30 frames per second, no graphical issues that I could see. So I did test this one a bit before I started recording, and it's just played flawlessly from the beginning really. And this is one I haven't applied any updates to. It's just working straight out the box with the sort of latest turnip driver. And yeah, it's playing flawlessly. I'll sneak past Team Rocket. If I go back to Route 1 and sort of go into the tall grass, it's still really smooth. We're not sort of dropping below 30. I'll bump into a Rattata there and just sort of see if we can force it into any issues, but I suspect it's going to handle it really well. With Rattata in the bag, yeah, I can say this is playing flawlessly. It's really nice. It's going to be an enjoyable play. I think I'm due a playthrough on this again soon anyway. And sticking with the Pokemon theme, we're on to Pokemon Sword, and again this is a similar story to Let's Go Pikachu. It's a nice solid 30 frames per second, and it looks really sharp too. The textures are pretty, popping colours, deep blacks, and it's just smooth. So we can see it's building some shaders in the background, and we'll see if the sort of upcoming cutscene does anything for any graphical issues or smoothness, but it's all still looking good. Of course, we saw the issues with Pokemon Legends, the sort of the textures popping in and out and the blacks, but this isn't something we're getting with Sword. It's just playing really nicely, sort of on all aspects really, with the cutscenes and the gameplay. It's worth mentioning at this point as well that it is possible to upscale some of the Switch games. You can go above the sort of 1x native resolution, and you can also put it in docked mode as well, which increases the sort of graphical quality. For the majority of the games, I've just been playing them handheld at 1x resolution, because they do look great. You know, on this OLED screen of this sort of size, a 6-inch, it looks really good anyway. And I haven't sort of tinkered to the point of pushing each one just to see how we get on a 1X and a docked, etc. Because if I'm getting good performance, I'm happy. Sort of quite easy to please, to be honest. As long as I can play them, they're smooth, they look good, I'm happy. And I guess that would be the same for the majority of gamers, really. They just want to sort of get their hands on the game and play. But there is sort of the option there. There is the world of sort of being able to delve into some of the settings and see if you can eke out some more performance or potentially some graphical sort of upgrades. But they look great anyway. And to be honest, in some cases, even better than they do on the original Switch. So it's a bonus really if you can get anything extra than that. So we've got our starter Pokemon. I just thought we'd see how we fare in a battle really with the performance. Just see if we do get any drops as well. The cutscenes have been fine, running around's been fine. Is the battling okay? And so far it seems like it is. So we can see that it's building some shaders in the background, but no issues that I can see. So we'll see, we'll drop a tackle onto Wooloo and see if that drops the performance at all. Building some of the shaders in the background, but no, seems fine. That poor little sheep has fainted. We're victorious and the game is playing beautifully. So Pokemon Sword is another big green tick. So with all the success we've been having, I thought I'd showcase some of the unfortunate failure I've had too. And one of those is Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. So I feel like this is a bit more of an obscure game that isn't sort of played probably quite as much as all the others I've showcased. And it's partly the reason why I picked it really, just to see if it'd work, and I enjoy Battlefront. And unfortunately, I can't get past this black screen. So apparently we're getting a solid 60 frames per second, but of black screen. I've tried various different drivers, I've changed all the settings, and it just won't load. It won't go past this black screen. So this is one, if you do have sort of any ideas, I'm happy to hear in the comments, and also share your own compatibility reports on EMU Ready and the Ryan Retro page, just so we can get games like this up and running. But yeah, unfortunately Battlefront Classic Collection just isn't working. And next we've got a classic in the form of Red Dead Redemption. So this is one that was announced in the last couple of days that we'd be getting an Android port for at the beginning of December through the Netflix game, so I'm really excited about that. But if you can't wait until December, you can play it on Switch, because we're getting a nice 30 frames per second in the opening cutscene, but we'll jump into a bit of gameplay and see how that runs as well. So at the very beginning, so unfortunately this is another one I haven't got a save file for, and I wasn't quite willing to complete the game just to thoroughly test it, unfortunately. But we're here in the game getting a nice steady 30 frames per second, and the textures are looking good, it's responsive, the sounds are good. Yeah, it's just an overall nice experience so far. And just sort of for science, I've turned off frame limiter, and we're sort of getting peaks of up to 45, 40 there. And it's just running a bit weird. Obviously it's running fast, but it just shows you it is capable of pushing it even more, but some of the textures are glitching with that frame limiter. So it's sort of a reason why I've not been using it really. I want sort of real world performance, how you're going to actually play these games, not really sort of a test of might, sort of showing the power. I just want to play games well and smoothly and have a good time. So, but yeah, we can see it's very capable of pushing it a little bit more, but not by much. But 30 is quite adequate for a nice smooth gameplay experience on Red Dead, I think. And we're back to Mario now with Mario Golf Super Rush. So I do love a golf game, especially one featuring Mario. And I'm not very good at this one. I'm just sort of getting a feel for the controls. But yeah, we can see we're getting sort of a near solid 60 frames per second with some of the shaders building in the background there. Sounds fine. It's quite responsive, and that's a terrible putt, but yeah, it feels smooth, and sort of the drive there was fine, and as is the putting really. The only thing that's lacking is my skill in this game, but it's been quite enjoyable. Oh, around the outside, so I'll see if I can put one, and then if we get any sort of degradation of performance once we get a bit of a cutscene there, bit of a result, no. So yeah, no texture issues, sound, frame rate, it's all perfect, it's all running fine. Next up, we've got a bit of an arcade classic in the form of Cruis'n Blast. which is quite a fun game on the Switch. So I thought I'd give this one a go with me enjoying racing games. And yeah, this is getting what we are on, sort of mid 50s to 60 frames per second. Sort of this is meant to run at 60 frames. It's very loud, the sound as well. I've not turned this down, but yeah, it's playing quite smooth. We've got some of the textures compiling in the background there, but no issues that I can see. Did have that sort of slight drop from 60 at the beginning, but it's the first time I've loaded the London level. Yeah, this is playing quite nice. It looks really good as well. So again, I just have to reiterate that sort of recording the screen of a device doesn't do it justice from seeing this in person. Sort of the vibrant colours and the deep blacks and stuff with the OLED screen, it looks fantastic, and it's playing really nice too. So this one's a lot of fun. If you want a fun sort of little arcade racer type for your Switch emulation, definitely give Cruis'n Blast a go, because this is a lot of fun. So sticking on the racing theme, next up we've got Lego 2K Drive, which is one, you know, with me enjoying the Lego games, I thought I'd give a go. And this is one where we do have graphical issues and sort of stutters. Like here, we've got no car. And there's issues in the sky, I can see. Some of the colours are a bit weird, and there's a couple of slowdowns. So I've tried various drivers for this. I've tried the new version 26 turnip driver, the T22, which does sort of work quite well with a lot of games really, but it's sort of, yeah, nothing was fixing these issues. So this is probably one of the more playable tracks that I've sampled. Some of them are just feature a lot of black, so it's not really playable. This, you can load it up, go through the menus, but you're not going to want to play the game like this. So this is one that I'll class as a fail. And we move on now to Animal Crossing New Horizons. So I emerge from my tent with some mail from my mom, and there we go, thank you mom. And Nintendo's sending me a letter. Hopefully it's not about this video. But yeah, this is running at a nice smooth 30 frames per second. I've already sort of played through for a bit, just sort of get set up and pick my location and chat to a couple of my neighbours. But this is playing really nicely, and we're sort of at night times. I'm recording this at night, but so when I was playing it in the day as well, it looked really beautiful with the colours and sort of the lighting and stuff. There's no graphical issues, very responsive with the controls. And yeah, my little dude here is running around, no issues. Even with some shaders still building in the background there, you can see that it's running absolutely fine, and as you'd expect really. And one thing to note as well, this is using sort of 5.2 gig of RAM. We can see on the bottom right there, maxing out the CPU and not quite maxing out the GPU. So again, this might be one that would be okay on the base model with sort of the 8 gig of RAM. But I'd say if you can push your budget with the 4, you're going to get more of an all-in-one system, you know, for Game Hub, sort of the upper end of the Switch emulation, some of the higher end emulation stuff, if you can just sort of creep up the sort of RAM really and the specs, because you know your CPU is going to be the same, but if you can get some performance out of the extra RAM, I'd say it's going to be worth it if you have got the budget for it. Next up, we've got Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. So out the bat, we're getting a good 30 frames per second, and once again, the game looks really nice. Sort of the swinging motion there, got minuscule bit of stutter in there as I landed from the swing, but the spinning animation with the crates is working okay. See if I can get that rope and get across. But yeah, this feels really fun, nice and smooth, the controls are responsive. Just a bit of a broken record really, apologies if I just keep saying the same stuff, but I've just been blown away with the performance really of the emulation, even as I fall to my death unfortunately. But yeah, the performance has just been great across all these games, with the exception of a few. I've just been really impressed. So I've just been saying a lot of the same stuff, but that's just because the performance has been really good. And a game I was really keen to get running was Dark Souls Remastered, because this is another one of my favourites, and I'd have been super pleased if I could get this running, but unfortunately I just can't. So this is one I've tinkered with, just like Star Wars, where I've tried all different drivers, different settings, and there's just a bit of a sticking point with the menus, because the game loads, so it boots up, so we get us all the splash screens, we get the intros and stuff, but then we get to the menu and we're sort of met with an issue where it crashes. So we'll get to this point where we press any button, it's checking save data, checking internet connection, and then bam, straight back to Eden. So this is one I just couldn't overcome really. So I'm quite keen to hear from people in the comments if you've had success with Dark Souls Remastered within the latest version of Eden. Let me know, just drop a comment below, because I'm quite keen to get this up and running, and I'd love to share the results with everybody so we could all do the same, because it's such a classic of a game not to be able to run, especially when we've got great performance across all the other titles. From one game which won't run to another which the Thor absolutely eats for breakfast is Disney Illusion Island. Got a fantastic performance on this, getting a solid easy 60 frames per second all the way through, and this is a really fun, cute little game, like a platformer, a few challenging little aspects, but it's just a nice sort of chill Disney platformer to play. So I love this one, and it plays really nicely, so we've got no stuttering, really responsive, which is quite important with a platformer, and it looks great. So yeah, this is running really well. It's using about 4.7 gig of RAM for the emulation, and it's not really dropping from 60. I think it's going down to 59 at points, but this is buttery smooth and is a really enjoyable experience. And onto a fairly lightweight Mario game next. So we've got Mario versus Donkey Kong's. This is a really fun little sort of puzzle platformer, and yeah, we're locked on at sort of 60 frames for this one. It looks fantastic, it's playing really nice, and just again, I'm sorry to keep going on, but the colours just look fantastic. And just like with Disney Illusion Island, this is running about 4.7, 4.8 gig of RAM usage, so should be okay for a base model of a 4, but again, if you can push the boat out and get that sort of upgraded RAM, you're going to enjoy the benefits on some of the heavier titles. But if you just want to play lighter Switch stuff like this, you can have a really fun experience and yeah, have a great time. And next up, we've got another classic, which is Metroid Prime Remastered, and it's our first sort of dual stick game really. So using the left to move, the right to aim, and this is playing really nicely. So we're getting a nice sort of solid 59, 60 frames per second, and everything seems to be working as it should. And it's just worth mentioning that this is one where I did have to sort of experiment with the drivers, because I was getting no sound initially. So I was using the latest turnip drivers and I was getting no sound. So I swapped it to the T22, which is quite a good sort of overall driver, not quite as new and up to date as the 25 and 26 version of the turnip drivers, but it's pretty solid and gives sort of good performance. And in this case, it fixed the sound. So yeah, I don't really know the controls for this. I keep going into the ball, but scanning wise, I don't know how to do it. Here we go. So yeah, it's running really nicely, and not much more to say on it really. It looks great, it's playing great, and a nice solid 60 frames per second. Next up, we've got a fun little racer in the form of Hot Wheels Unleashed. So this is the first one, not the second one. But we can see here we're not quite up to 30, we're at sort of mid-20s, so we've got 24, 25 frames per second. Still feels quite smooth, but it is quite important for sort of racing games to get a smooth sort of frame rate. It feels okay though, it's playable. I don't feel like I'm having any issues with it. It is building some shaders in the background, because it is the first time I've raced on this track, and it's popping up those tutorials, but the game looks great. I'm sort of flying around in the sky there, trying to catch up with everybody. But yeah, so it's not a bad experience, but it's not quite the sort of native full frame rate that you'd want. So sort of up to you really whether it's playable. But for me, I could sit and play this for a bit, and perhaps on other tracks as we get further into the game, I might start to change my mind. But at the minute, this is quite fun. So next up, we've got an absolute classic in the form of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And I think the proof in playability is the fact that I started out by initially testing this game and then just started playing it through because I was enjoying it so much. And yeah, we're getting a nice sort of smooth 60-ish frames per second, even with the shader compiling there in the background. It looks fantastic, and I'm just going to be sort of a parrot again and just keep repeating again and again that they all look and play great, most of them. It's just an exceptional experience on the Switch, and Donkey Kong Country, thankfully, as one of my favourite games, is no exception to that. And something I've not mentioned yet on some of the other games is the rumble. So you're getting the sort of rumble effects that you would natively on the Switch. So when I'm jumping, landing on enemies and stuff, it's giving me that sort of subtle, gentle rumble in the background, which is really nice. So it just sort of adds to that immersiveness and the true to feel original Switch gameplay. So next we're moving on to Super Mario RPG. So this again is a fairly lightweight game, which you'd expect it to run quite nicely, and in this case it is. So we're getting a 60 frames per second frame rate there. We can see it's looking really good. I've not encountered any issues in sort of the playthrough that I've done so far. It's just really smooth, really nice, just like all the others. And yeah, it's a good experience, very enjoyable. And as we move to Bowser's Keep, there's sort of no exception to that really, even with the cutscenes, which you'd expect to be sort of graphically a bit more intensive. Not getting any slowdown or any issues there. And as we're in a bit of a tutorial battle, the gameplay's still smooth, sort of up there with the 60s, you know, 59, 58, it slightly drops, but not noticeable at all, still very fun. And we move on to Mario and Luigi Brothership. And this is a good example really of where drivers make the difference, because it took a couple of goes to find one which loaded it into the actual game rather than sort of the screen with the ship, sort of almost the loading screen. So again, if you do sort of pop the games in, you're struggling to get them to boot, or you encounter graphical issues, your starting point will be to adjust the drivers initially, because that's what can make all the difference. You know, if you're getting blacks popping in terms of the textures, you're getting issues with the speed, you're getting issues with it actually loading up, then that can be down to the driver. So it's worth sort of experimenting and seeing what kind of results you get with the different drivers. Then in terms of this gameplay, we can see we're getting a nice sort of smooth, solid 30 frames per second as intended, which is just perfect for a game of this type. Very fun, it looks great, and you could definitely play this through without issue. Next up, we'll take a trip over to Hogwarts with Lego The Harry Potter Collection. And in sort of the opening cutscene, we're getting a nice solid 60 frames per second. And this is something I know hasn't happened in the past. I've loved playing this game on other devices, but these cutscenes haven't run as smooth on those. You know, with the continuing sort of development of the drivers and the power you get within these devices, I have seen sort of firsthand the strides that are being made with sort of Switch emulation, because this is perfect. You know, I remember stuttering and issues with this opening cutscene, but the 4 has handled it really, really well with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip. We've got some of the gameplay here. We're getting a nice solid 60 frames per second, switching between Harry and Hagrid and using the effects. It's nice and smooth, not getting any drops, no graphical or texture issues. Sounds great. Looks great. It's a very playable experience. So I know, again, commenting on the sort of playability of a game when I'm only a few minutes into it, but I have played this further on a previous save, and yeah, it's great. And I know sort of from past experience on the Switch, this game does run well. So if we get this sort of level of performance early on, we can expect good performance later on in the game too. And next up, we've got the very beautiful looking V-Rally 4. So I'm a big fan of racing games, and rally games are no exception to that. And this is looking great. I've been playing this one a bit, and it's playing great. So I'm getting a nice 30 frames per second. I'll put it on medium difficulty for this. It's very difficult to play looking through a camera screen, but yeah, this feels nice and smooth. Got no sort of graphical issues that I can see, other than sort of my bad skill here, but. And unlike Grid Autosport, we haven't got the sort of horrible stuttering as we go around corners and stuff. Everything's loading in fine, although I appreciate we haven't got sort of the AI CPU cars driving around as well. But yeah, it's very enjoyable. It looks fantastic as well with the sort of graphic settings. So yeah, perfectly enjoyable, definitely playable. And last but no means least, we've got The Witcher 3. So I've brought in a save file just to sort of progress me in the game a bit, and I've popped on a horse just to gallop on it and see what happens really. So we're getting a steady-ish 30 frames per second, which is pretty impressive really for a game like this. And you can sort of see some of the textures sort of arrive, I guess, as we're galloping towards them, sort of the ground textures with the vegetation, but it's not too bad. It looks really pretty, and for a game like this to be running on an Android device, you know, with a Switch emulation is pretty incredible really, and it's totally playable. I say it's fairly smooth, you know, we're not getting dramatic sort of frame drops, you know, like we've seen on some of the games like Autosport. We're having some quite significant issues with that, but this is really nice. I say it's definitely playable, and I quite comfortably play through the game with it looking and playing like this. Just going to leave a bit of a footnote on The Witcher 3. So this is one I did have to sort of persevere with a bit, because I loaded it up, I used the latest drivers, no issues, it played really nicely just as it does now, and then I booted it up for this test video and it just wouldn't load. So instead of getting The Witcher sat, you know, on the title screen like it does by the fire, it was just black, but it still showed the menu. And when I tried to load my save, it just got stuck on the loading screen. I'd get sort of the swirling sort of loading logo on the bottom right, and it wouldn't work. And whatever I tried, you know, changing the drivers, deleting the save, bringing in a different save, it wouldn't work. And the solution to it was reinstalling Eden. So that's a bit of a sort of downside to it, and a bit of a footnote to playing this game. So I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but it's something I did. So if you do have issues where suddenly something stops working and you can't really figure out why, it might just be worth a fresh install of Eden just to see if that fixes it like it did for me. But yeah, once you get past that, and your save files are safe anyway because you can export them, you can take them out of Eden, pop them onto a micro SD or upload them onto the cloud, so you're not going to lose any progress because the save files are completely separate. But it's just worth noting that not everything's perfect with Switch emulation, as we've seen throughout the video, but to be having The Witcher running is amazing. And there we go, as the Witcher sprints around, that brings the Switch testing to a conclusion. So final thoughts really, I'm absolutely blown away at the performance of the 4 with Switch emulation. There's been such a high percentage of the games I've tested in today's video that have just run flawlessly, just like if you're playing them natively on the Switch. You know, the frame rates, how smooth it was, the way it looks. But of course that's not the case across the board. You know, some games flat out won't run at all, some will run with graphical issues or not quite a sort of optimal performance, and some just sort of scrape by where it's okay, but you probably wouldn't play the whole game like it. And some like The Witcher here, like where it's totally playable, you can tolerate some of sort of the textures coming in and out, but it's absolutely fine and would be really fun to play. And I'd probably say, having tested all of these games, that Switch emulation has been in no better place than it is now, especially with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 devices, where we've got such good support on the chipset for drivers and optimizing the performance of these games, where we can share compatibility reports and settings to have the best possible gameplay experience on these Switch games. And I'd be really keen to hear from you in the comments if you've had any sort of different results with your testing and gameplay on the 4, or indeed any other Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 device. Sort of what settings are you using, what games are you playing, and what kind of performance are you getting? And it'd be great to share those settings too, so I can either pop them in a pinned comment or pop them on the resources like EMU Ready or the Ryan Retro website where compatibility reports are shared. It's just great to get this information out into the community so we can all have a great experience playing these games on the 4 and on any other Android device with Switch emulation. If the video was useful, I'd really appreciate if you could drop a like, because it really does help the channel. And if you are new here, subscribing would be great, because I'm going to be sharing some new content soon. I've got some devices on order like the Odin 3 and the Conker Pocket Fit, so I'm going to be testing those similar videos, and I'm going to be putting these devices against each other to see which gets the best performance. So it's really worth subscribing so you can get those videos as soon as I've created and uploaded them. So thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.